Well, I started out as a classical guitar maker. Of course, many people from my age group grew up in the 70s and the 60s, and we all played guitar. Somewhere along the line, I started taking them apart or having to fix mine, and I became a luthier back in about 1978. I was making classical guitars for about 6 years, and during that process, I met a fellow named Bill Weaver who owned a violin shop, this violin shop actually, but it was located in another part of Bethesda. So as I came along, he asked me to come work for him, figuring that I had all my skills, I knew how to make instruments, I just didn't have anything, a lot of experience with making violins. So that was back about 1980, and haven't looked back ever since. I've been just fascinated with the bowed stringed instruments. I still play guitar, of course. But. There are a lot of people across this country that are just really, really passionate about playing music. And the fact that every day they have an instrument that they can turn to that can give them some pleasure and help them relax and enjoy maybe part of their nature that's not a verbal part. And those instruments need to be produced, they need to be manufactured, they need to be kept in playing condition, because most of them are made out of wood. And wood is a wonderful material to work with, but it has the characteristic of tending to change over time. People often make the mistake of buying a stringed instrument and thinking that it's like a marble statue, that they bought it, there it is, it's going to be that way forever. And really, with the exception of the violin world, where the violinists and violists know that they need to come in and see the doctor every 6 months or so, the violin craft people, the people who repair and manufacture instruments, take it for granted that this is a process where they're going to be working on instruments over time. We look at old instruments as being kind of like Sleeping Beauty. You could put them in the case and loosen the strings and they could go to sleep for 100 years. And then some little girl or some little boy decides they want to take violin, and they go get grandpa's instrument out of the attic and they bring it into somebody like me, and we'll take time and we'll take it apart and fix all the things that need fixing and put it back together again. And these instruments often have a lifetime that's 200 or 300 years old before they can't be used anymore. How instruments retain their sound over such a long period of time is an interesting question. There's a lot of speculation, and these days with very, very sensitive computer equipment and microphones and being able to examine things on a molecular level, people have done a lot of research about how Stradivarius made his instruments and how his contemporaries in Cremona in the late 1600s, what they were doing differently that seems to be so special. And there are so many theories, but one thing is very, very demonstrable, and that is that if you have an instrument and you play it a lot and you maintain it properly, it will sound good. And the better the player, this is the interesting part, the better the player, the better the instrument sounds. So that if you give a Stradivarius to somebody, say like me, who's a mediocre player at best, and I play it every day, it's not going to sound that great after a couple of months of me doing that. Whereas you can take a student's instrument and give it to a master player, have him play it hard every day for several months, and the instrument will actually improve. Now, from an engineering standpoint, it's likely that the explanation is that the fibers of the wood get used to vibrating a certain way, and they become sort of trained, because wood has a memory, physically has a memory. Bearing in mind that when Stradivarius was making his instruments, there really wasn't a middle class. There was royalty, and there was the peasants who were the laborers and the working class. And so most of the instruments that were made during that period actually went into the hands of people who were very, very good players, and they've stayed there for 300 years and just always been taken care of and handed down with great care from one generation to the next, so that they are handled by the right people and they're maintained by the right people. And a lot of it has to do with just the fact that they're 300 years old. The wood sounds, awesome. Some of the most interesting things that we have here are instruments that aren't really playable. We take kids from their pigtails all the way up through being concertmistress of the National Symphony.